And I joined my colleague from Ohio when he rejected the notion of crisis. And I totally agree with him because I feel what we're seeing today is that higher ed is not immune to change. And the changes that we're seeing happening in our society today will definitely will force us to change or be able, not to be able to continue in the business that we're in. We soon forget what happened in this country and this nation when we went from agricultural to industrial. The only real difference in terms of the magnitude of the change is that change was much lower then. And now change is happening so fast that it's difficult for us to even comprehend it and visualize it. And you know, we were talking about the year 14, you were talking about the year 1450 or whatever. And it reminds me of that story, which you have all heard, of these two professionals that my colleagues at Harvard wanted to bring back to life. You know, they've been gone for 1,000 years, and they wanted to bring back these two people to see how they would react, what would happen. So they decided to bring back a medical doctor and a professor. And they took the medical doctor to a hospital, and the guy was totally lost. He wouldn't know, he wouldn't recognize anything, any of the drugs, any of the surgical equipment, nothing. So the medical doctor decided he needed to go back to the university and start all over again. And then they took the professor and took the professor to a university and took the guy to a classroom, and he went there, went to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk and started lecturing. He was at home. The meaning of the story, of course, is that we've been doing the same thing for many, many, many years and nothing has changed. But the fact of the matter is that change is here to stay, and we need to look at that. And I want to be brief and leave you with two thoughts, because things have changed in more ways than one. And the fact of the matter is that we all recognize today that for this nation to keep its position of leadership, for us to be competitive in the world, the university, college, whatever you want to call it, is no longer for just a few. The universities and colleges have to open its doors to a much broader audience. We all recognize that more than 80% of all the new jobs that are created in the United States today require some kind of post-secondary education. And what that means is that with a high school diploma, just a high school diploma, you're going to live in the cycle of poverty for the rest of your life, in subsistence salaries, or in jail, or in welfare, or so forth and so on. So we end up paying for that, whether we do it one way or the other. And in order for our nation to do that, we have to do things like this present administration has called for, like doubling the number of people with post-secondary credential. And of course, as I told, I had the occasion to discuss it with the president, I told that was a very ambitious goal, unless we're able to really invest beyond the stimulus funds and beyond these two next years. And the fact of the matter is that for that to happen, the very same population that that have the least opportunities to go to college are going to have some kind of a system that allows them not only to come to college but to succeed. That's why I have been advocating for the last couple of years that if we really want to make a difference in this country and really make access a reality, we need to have a Title I approach to higher ed. Nothing less than that is going to change the present situation. I come from an institution that is not only large, but is very complex. We enroll the largest number of Hispanics and the largest number of African Americans of any college or university in the United States. 61% of my students are low income by federal standards. 38% of them live in poverty. And I could go on and on in terms of first generation college students, in terms of English not being the native language of the majority of my students, and so forth and so on. A very difficult population to serve simply because 80% of them, 75 to 80%, it varies, come unprepared for college work. And yet, when you look at the system of funding for our institution, it's difficult to make any sense of it and to feel that we really have the resources to be able to make the change. The present crisis, if we want to call it that, is just a culmination of many years of underfunding that have reached a point of no return. These students require not only having small classes, excellent teachers who are dedicated to teaching, but also they need a level of support that is unprecedented. These are students who are very fragile, very students who, the very students that having to go to an emergency room or an increase in rent will keep them from the classrooms. And we can talk all we want about innovation, we can talk all we want about being creative and being effective and being productive, but the fact of the matter is that when you look at my state, and part of the problem that we have in our state is that we don't have the good luck and the fortune of having a chancellor who provides leadership. In Florida, we ask the question, who's in charge? Because you don't know whether it's the governor or whether it's the legislature or whether it is the Board of Governors or the Board of Trustees of the universities. And the fact of the matter is that it presents a real problem because we have not set priorities. There is not a real plan in terms of how we're going to bring Florida being almost the last in the States in terms of the number of people with baccalaureate degrees. And we all know how important it is when you're trying to attract businesses, when you're trying to create opportunities for students to get into high-paying jobs, to be able to enjoy the fruits of progress, to attract those kind of industries if you don't have a well-trained workforce. And the challenge that we have, and I'll just give you an example, and it's not that we have lost. The last 3 years at my institution, we're getting 19% less dollars per FTE than 3 years ago. But when you look at the last 10 years, it's been on a crescendo in terms of the lack of funding. And today, believe it or not, we get less than half of what the school system gets per dollars per FTE, and we get almost 1/4 of what the universities get to provide the services to the same type of students, with the difference is that at the University of Florida, the students that they hand select on the basis of high GPAs and high SATs, those students are going to succeed in spite of the university. At my institution, and that's my alma mater, so I say that with a lot of love, I have to tell you, but the students that we get, being so fragile, in fact, the fact of the matter is that with the dollars that we get per FTEs, and it's being, again, in a decreasing scale, it's almost very, very difficult to do the job that we need to do. It's not just doing the same job, but how can we do better? And the fact also is that, we tried everything. We are known as being, we've been declared the most innovative community college in the nation. We have received the first Healthwork Award from ACE for everything good in the academy, and we received a lot of awards. But the fact of the matter, we don't fool ourselves. We try to understand what our mission is and what we have to do. And what we have to do is to preserve the quality of the classroom and learning experience for the students so they can be successful in the jobs if they are in the 2-year program associated in science, or if they want to transfer to another university. And it's true that we're offering now baccalaureate degrees, and we chose to do baccalaureate degrees in areas where there are jobs and where there is need, like nursing, like teaching, like law enforcement management, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is that those programs, we are doing them because the universities in our state refuse to do them. And when they learned that the legislature, in their frustration, said, well, we're going to allow community colleges to offer baccalaureates, then they wanted to oppose it. And they mounted this campaign against community colleges doing baccalaureates. I'm not saying it's good or bad, community colleges doing baccalaureates. What I'm saying is, by default, we ended up with that as part of our mission. But now, what you're seeing in this so-called crisis is that my local university in my town dropped most of the programs in education. In a state where we have to import teachers all the time by the thousands because we don't produce enough teachers in the state of Florida. And the university in Gainesville is planning to do the same thing. And we have programs such as industrial engineering and a lot of programs that are very much needed in Florida being dropped. Again, back to the issue of lack of leadership, because every university in Florida wants to be a research university. They all want to have medical schools. And as I shared at lunchtime, 2 new schools in the last 2 years have emerged. And, you know, there is not enough money to go by. That's the simple truth. The times when education took the bulk of the money in the legislature are long gone. Now we're competing with Medicaid, we're competing with jails, we're competing with transportation and everything else. And because of lack of leadership, we have a problem that is really unbearable, because we're not able to meet the needs of the population that most need the programs. So it is something that hopefully the state will see the light, and all of us working together, Ed, can really make a difference and an impact on these issues. But, and we have tried, let me just say this in conclusion, we have tried everything that we feel there is to be done. And perhaps there is more, but we try to emulate every positive thing that we know is happening around the nation. And yes, we have universities on campus, and that is a wonderful thing. We even have a program where the students begin in the 9th grade on campus and end up with a baccalaureate degree without having to go anywhere else at a much cheaper rate than if they would go to different universities. We sponsored 2 high schools. They happen to be 2 of the highest scoring, academically scoring high schools in the state. As a matter of fact, one of them made number 15 in the list of 1,500 high schools that Newsweek just published, I think it was a week ago. And so we're trying to do all kinds of things to be more efficient, to coordinate more. There is a lot more that needs to happen. But where I differ a little bit is that all the solutions are not in just being more productive and more creative. You reach the point at the end of that elasticity when you just can't anymore. And it's a matter of how do we bring about the resources. In closing, the main problem in Florida is that we have a taxation system that is very archaic. It dates back to the times when Florida was mostly an agricultural state. We depend on the sales tax only for our funding. And it works against the economy. When the economy is in bad shape, that's when we have the least resources to be able to support the institution, whether it's education or anything else. And the community colleges in Florida do not have the help of a local tax. As in most other states, local community colleges have both state support and local support. We don't have in Florida. So a lot has to happen before we're able to get our act together. But we're not giving up. We're pursuing a lot of options. And again, thank you for inviting me to be here today.